All right, Jonathan Blow time. Here we go. Social media rots your brain.
Have I heard of carbon? My response is please stop bothering me about the Apple M1 chip.
I thought carbon was a language meant to replace. I'm confused with the M1. Okay. I asked that M1 question. Oh, nice.
Please stop bothering me about what is my opinion about Bluebird Blop Linux distro. So, guys.
By the way, that is truly fair. You should quit bothering people about every Linux. I cannot tell you how many people are like, okay, so you're on Pop OS, but have you tried? Have you tried? And it's just like, nah, man. Honestly, I just want to have i3. I just want to use Tmux, and I just want to use Vim in peace. Like, that's it. That's all I want to do. That's it. I don't want anything else. I literally don't want anything else.
Guys, the carbon question. This is triggering me here. Not because of anything to do with carbon at all. It is the following thing, guys. The fact that multiple people have this question it's a product of the current internet environment that we have built, which is about propagating shallow news at very high speed, and things just sort of, go into and out of being vogue to talk about. What is the current thing this week, right? And the thing that you should realize is if you zoom out and see that pattern, ignore particular instances. But if you zoom out and look at that pattern as a whole pattern and what comes from it, almost none of those things are very important by definition. And therefore, because they only lasted a day or a week. Therefore, if this is a major source of where you get your ideas from or what you think about things or what you're interested in, you're preventing yourself from having high quality thoughts in a certain.
The hard part about that statement is that one of the strongest things a person can do is to see what other people do. The ability to be able to recognize how someone's approaching a problem and their ability to solve it, despite maybe what they're solving, how they're doing it, won't become popular and will eventually just fall away and become out of vogue. Yeah, like maybe that's not important, but sometimes the idea itself is actually really, really nice. And you can often just take out these concepts and apply them as you see things. Like, I agree. RxJS was something I used a lot in 2013. RxJS is something that I used a lot in 2014. RxJS is something I used a lot in 2015. RxJS is something that I actively hated by 2016. You see what happened there. And by the way, is there something right there? Is that my backpack? Oh, it is my backpack. Anyways, it's going to stay in the shot. It's staying in the shot. But using RxJS, that was the first time I was ever introduced to a monad. And of course, that actually became quite useful. I was very, very happy about that. And I actually ended up using them monads in other things. I used it in logging and some other items. And that actually made things very, very useful. So the idea of RxJS was, people were really excited about it, especially in the earlier days. And in the latter days, it's largely fallen out of, vogue. But the concepts of monads and stuff like that was exposed to me as a normie, right? As somebody who didn't have like that kind of exposure. And so it's been very beneficial, and I've been very, very happy about that. And so is looking at everything that's in vogue bad or good? It's very hard for me to agree with this take in this sense, because I don't know if there is a definite answer. And maybe I'm misunderstanding his argument. Right, I could be very well misunderstanding his argument completely and arguing completely the wrong thing, which wouldn't surprise me at all. But how I'm taking his argument is that when you see something new, you should just ignore it. Which, by the way, if you're just learning, maybe that's better advice. Maybe there's a time and place for you to do investigations, or a way you can time box things to make sure that you're not always getting swept away with the latest thing and just wasting inordinate amount of time just learning the current thing.
Sense. And this is very serious to me. I mean, a little bit of it's fine, right? But, I'm here on the Twitch channel, and every time there's a new
says the man promoting Rust before it got to 1.0. That's a stupid argument, by the way. Hate to tell you this, Silver Hairs. Yeah, you're getting it. Why is the number in the major version? What does that say? Most people run with Semver. Semver has really nothing to do with the readiness of a product. So why would a 1 in the major version make any difference? If they promise not to break any APIs, why would you go to 1? 1 means that you have fundamentally broken something. So it's like that number doesn't mean anything. It has no actual value. I think he's saying outsourcing your opinions on these things to other people is not good. Now this, sometimes it's not good, but sometimes, like, how else do you go? Like, you can't have an opinion on everything. If I told you this, that I think constantly customizing your environment is not necessarily the greatest approach to learning software and being successful at software, you don't have to listen to that. But the inverse is that for you to discover if this opinion is good or bad is going to require quite a few years of you always customizing your stuff constantly and then measuring the outcome of that. Not all knowledge is free, right? And I think that's one of the hard parts about this.
Thing people are asking me about it. So like in aggregate, the Twitch chat brain is a brain that has a very poor information diet, is another.
That's fair. That's completely fair. I'm totally on Jonathan Blow's take right there. Twitch chat brain, your temperature's your IQ's room temperature is what he's trying to say. Based and true, yup, and a W. Yeah, absolutely.
The way to say it. And that shouldn't be that surprising, but it is how it is, right? This will actually keep you from being a really good programmer in the long.
I do want to do one thing, and I know we always make fun of Twitch chat, but like, can we just one quick thing? I do try to normalize some level of like, I don't think everybody's stupid. I don't really like that opinion that everybody is stupid except for me. Like, people say this. I just saw this like yesterday. Someone responded that 90% of programmers are dead weight, right? And then you have to look at how many people like that tweet, and you have to start thinking, what are the odds that everyone that liked that tweet is also within that special 10%? Like, at some point, you might not realize that you're probably part of that 90%. How are we all geniuses on the bell curve? And so Twitch chat doesn't get the time to express themselves with words, but instead with written text, which is also is very difficult to do well, especially when it's time moving and it's fast and it's topical, and you're like 6 seconds behind where we got more information, and then I read your chat, which is behind and like incorrect. It's not that great, by the way. Penis, ligma, communist intensifies, communism intensifying. Yeah, okay, so Twitch chat isn't, like, I'm not saying it's great.
Long term. Because it's the wrong kind of thought. It is not, like, we need people who are competent who can solve hard problems. And building competence is not a short attention span thing, and solving hard problems is not a short attention span thing. So
true and factual. I don't think those two are related, though. I think you can read news, you can read people's opinions, you can be involved actively on the internets, but I don't think you can relate necessarily those two things.
We're just really not handling ourselves very well with where we place our mental attention. And this could have very large consequences in the short term, like even within the next year or two. So it bothers me. That's all I'm saying. All about the hot takes, it's empty calories. Yeah, but even like hot take implies controversial, right? But like, people almost don't know or care anymore that there's something to do with your attention besides go on Twitter and see, or go on Hacker News or Reddit and see what people are talking about right this second. And the problem is, done over years, that's going to damage your brain.
Sounds like there's probably a time-based thing there, right? Like, I think there's probably like an hour measurement involved here. I mean, I think he's right on the hot take. The thing is I can go on Twitter and say hot take, working hard, working hard and working smart is better than working smart. And people will be like, people lose their crap on Twitter when you say working hard is good. And so it's like, that's considered a hot take. So hot take and all this kind of crap is stupid. Hot take really means this is going to ruffle the average Twitter reader's, feathers, or the inverse. It's going to be a hot take, and it's actually not a hot take. Most people simply agree with it, and they hit the like button because it says the word hot take, and they want to like a hot take. It's as lukewarm as it gets. Working hard does result in more wins. It's like crazy that you have to say that, yes, if you had one person that works for 30 hours a week and one person that works for 80 hours a week, and they're both learning the same thing, one's going to be better than the other. And people just like actually try to fight. Well, actually, you never know that 30-hour person will be like, you know what? It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you need to see a problem over and over again. Time in the saddle almost always dictates a good programmer versus a bad programmer. It's crazy that people try to argue against that. Well, actually, those 30 hours could be massively productive. It's like, they're not that productive. I hate to break this to you. That's not how it works. And so like, that's like one of these spicy takes. It's kind of wild that is a thing. 1,000 hours is a big help. 10,000 is amazing. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's the end of the day. Facts. I heard in Africa, once every 60 seconds, a full minute passes.
No exaggeration. It may have already damaged your brain. Hopefully in a way that's recoverable, but
I will say this, though. I will say this. I think there are people that do actually have what I call the brain rot, right? And the brain rot, I've seen it before. I just recently saw a video where somebody got super heated about HTMX and compared it to like doing something a really bad way and then React doing it the really good way, right? There are people that just can't see that not all problems have to be solved one way, right? And so like this to me is the example of actual brain rot where social media has actually hurt you. Like you don't even have the opportunity to realize whether you're right or wrong. And this person actually, when describing HTMX, described it wrong technically on many points, like actually did not understand the thing, but then made reasons why the thing he misunderstood was this way, and then why React was better. And you're just like, okay, that's not, like, let's back it up a little bit. Let's actually, maybe a longer stint in something will give you a good or bad opinion. Like my opinion on React has come from working in not one, but two multi-million line code bases of React. Maybe the first one, maybe the website was more like 500 to 700,000 lines of code. Maybe I could say the first one is closer to, less. And the first one was actually a much more pleasant experience. I actually liked it significantly more. The second one was much, much, much harder to work in. And so my opinion of React is probably different than people who've only ever worked in like, say, 10, 20, 30,000 line code bases. Those are just simply different opinions. And so the problem is that I don't try to approach something and go, this is good, you should only use this. Like my argument comes down to like archetypes of the argument. Why would I like something like HTMX over React? Why would I like Go over JavaScript? Well, really it comes down to I like knowing where my program errors versus discovering where my program errors. I just find those two things fundamentally different propositions. And that's that. Why do I like HTMX over React for most projects? Because most projects don't need intense client-side state. I find client-side state difficult because I have to first program the thing on the server side and convert it into a view that can be transferred across the wire. Then I have to hydrate that same state on the client and then re-go through creating that state and representing it as a new view on another device. And that's just like, I'm going to make a bug. It's going to be difficult. I'm going to make a mistake having to do a bunch of these things over and over again on two different sides. But that's me. Maybe I'm not as good of a programmer as the people that are doing all these React things. And that's also potential. There you go. That's brain rot for me.
Damage
is the people that's like, you can't see the two arguments. I get why client state is good. There's plenty of problems that are just easier to solve with client state. And I'm very, very, very happy about that. I don't argue against that. Absolutely.
And I'm speaking from experience from both this phenomenon and previous ones, right? So I do less Twitter than a lot of people, but I was doing a fair amount of it. And like, it's just a way, if you're not feeling 100% motivated and you want to just kind of casually do some stuff while you work today, it's very easy to go on like Twitter or whatever and read some stuff. And I was noticing that my attention span was pretty short for a lot of things. It wasn't short for programming still. I was doing fine at programming, but I think that's because I built all my programming habits. But like I didn't want to read a book, right? And in fact, where I would claim that I wanted to read a book and then wouldn't read much for like a year. And then, like that has consequences.
I do think those are two different things, right? I think it's very easy to program because program is stimulant, right? Like your screen, it's all the things that make humans kind of like, we struggle. Dopamine effects, right? We really struggle with those. And social media also has the same thing, whereas reading a book, you just don't get the same effect. It's much harder to get that effect. And so I don't think, it's very hard for me to say that social media is the problem why people don't read a book. Like it's very hard for me to agree with that statement because I don't know if it's actually true. Like I love the idea of reading. Reading is a little bit more difficult. All right. It's always a little bit more difficult. And so I do find that I really like, I've been trying to read more and I've been really trying to read read a lot more. I know there's a lot of studies out there that say, okay, yes, attention span has been reduced by short form content. I'm not sure how really good that thing is. I don't know how good of a study that is. And I'm not sure if it's actually real. And what I mean by that is that I think your brain falls into optimizations patterns, right? And so if all you do is consume shorter things, your brain is more optimized to consume shorter things. I don't think it actually means that you can't have a longer form of attention. I think that it just really means that you have to have maturity to know when to do the thing. Like I find people, I know people that can do both short and long form, that they are able to say, no, I'm going to do the long form thing now. And they're just simply able to emotionally do the right thing, even when it's difficult. I'm not fully convinced that the problem is attention spans as much as it is just simple, like inability to regulate yourself against doing something you don't want to do. Like it's hard. It's very, very hard. And the thing is that each one of these contents just feel better. Right? I'm not sure if it's actually is some, I don't know if this is causation or correlation is what I'm trying to say. I'm not convinced that it's causation versus correlation. That's it. I don't know.
Just on your mental development. Now, that part I fixed. But, you know, I grew up before the internet. So what happens to somebody who's like 10 years old today, right? Now, I did not grow up before television. And back during the television days, when people watched TV, which I did a lot.
I did a lot too.
There was this commonly understood thing like, oh, don't watch too much television, it'll rot your brain, right? And we were kind of sarcastic about it. We said, oh, you know, whatever.
Yep.
In retrospect, that was totally right. It did rot all of our brains. And I probably would actually be measurably smarter today if I hadn't spent so much time watching television, and I probably would have been able to do more faster in life, and I probably would be a lot more competent at what I do.
So this is one of those things where I disagree on the statement. I know there's like brain scan studies that show that the consumption of television increases like these lesions in your brain, like it actually like can drop your IQ by or a generation's amount. But my general thesis is that I don't think the reason is that you're watching TV is the problem. I think the reason is, and I think this can happen in any form of content or anything you do, is that when it's about time sitting in autopilot. When you watch TV versus playing a video game, those are two very different experiences, right? When you watch TV, you are just letting information hit your face, and you're not even engaging in the topic much, right? You might feel an emotion, you might get excited, you might be thrilled, but it's just like you're just feeling and consuming. Whereas at least with, like a video game, you could argue the same amount of hours spent on a video game, you're actively thinking through and pushing into the ideas or arguing the topics or trying to find ways around stuff. It's like there is a fundamental difference there. And I'm not sure if it's just the act of watching TV that's bad versus the act of not like engaging that's bad. Can people engage in a topic, and even when it comes to television, and it actually causes like good things versus bad things? Like Candy Crush. I mean, Candy Crush is like such a kind of a mindless game. It's like there's not like a lot to it. TV is a passive consumption. Yeah. And so that's why I hate, like, I don't like saying that this has to be this way. Because I feel very strongly about this. I really don't like my kids watching TV, and we really try to do TV is for family movie night. But then any other form of screen time, it's us playing Elden Ring or Fortnite or Roblox, or me trying to get them to program Python or Lua or Scratch or anything like that, right? It's like more going into like the thought-filled stuff. Your kids play Elden Ring? Yeah, I dodge and roll. My boy Caleb swings the sword. That's how I played. That's how I made time to play Elden Ring. Okay, we played together.
Like.
By the way, I never beat Elden Ring. I'm ashamed of it. It's a game that I would love to beat. I never got to beat because my kid gave up at Beastman Clergyman, or the Beast Clergyman. Very hard boss, by the way. Very, very hard boss.
In a major way, not in like a barely noticeable way, like in a major way. It is very clear to me when I look at how I spent all my time back then that that's the case. Being honest about these things is important. And so I don't see why, I think the modern internet stuff is worse than television was, because at least if you're watching a shitty episode of Airwolf or something, I forget if that was a half-hour show or an hour show, but it at least had a consistent narrative for the length of its runtime, which is not something you get from a lot of other things.
The funny part is we agree so much. Like Jonathan Blow and I agree so dang much on this topic. But like, again, it still comes down to this passive. I actually think the consistent narrative, the thoughtfulness that would go into the show is less good than if you could read Twitter news and actively engage and think about why this problem's being solved this way and actively engage in the topic of doing it and thinking through it, right? I mean, it's generally, I'm not sure. Like, I just am not convinced that that's not it. Like, I really do think that engaging in whatever you're doing is always going to be a lot better, right? And, like, that's why we're watching this video. This video is us engaging and thinking and chewing on the idea of what he's trying to say. And it actually is chat trying to participate here. Chat, I am trying to read what you are saying. Just most of what you say isn't, like, super intelligent, but some of it is really, really good. I want you to know that right now, okay? You put it on the screen for a moment. Deck, balls, deck. Holes. Prime Thor, Casey Blow. Yeah, I've had 3 out of 4 on, and you know, Casey and I are really good friends. I actually really like Casey. Thor and I are good friends. Really like Thor. Me and Jonathan Blow have never really talked. My suspicion is that we're very, very, very similar. That we're probably too similar to be great friends. Have you ever had that experience where we're so similar but like slightly fractured that it won't work? Which is funny because like me and him, like, I am fully agreed on this topic. I just don't believe in the origin that he's saying it.
Do I think it affected my intelligence? Yes. I think I'm less smart than I would have been.
I would agree. Me personally, I think smoking pot at 8 years old and dropping a lot of acid probably ruined my intelligence more than anything else. Before I went to college and dropped too much acid where I had visual problems for a decade, before that, I could remember anything I heard. Like I had like that full-on good old-fashioned pretty much photographic memory, like not fully photographic, but we're talking like I'm edging. I was like an edgelord to photographic, whatever the one step down was. And now, you know, memory's not nearly as good. Sucks. It could also be you aging. Nah, definitely. It definitely was too much acid. That really downgraded me from that 4K to 1440.
Probably. It certainly affected my ability to exercise my intelligence. And therefore, it took me a lot longer to get where I would have otherwise been, right? Like, in some sense...
Doubt it was acid to have that effect. As the person who experienced it, I love when people try to tell you your life. There's nothing better than when someone tells you your life. It's like, dude, I've had 10/20 vision my whole life. I've been able to see not the line in which is the good vision line, but the one that's below the good vision line. I was always in the one that was below it. And then in a singular day, I had this little, my kid came up to me crying, and he had this like white stuff on his hand, and there was this bottle that he was holding that we didn't know where he got it from, and he was crying. It was hurting him, and I was like, what is this stuff? Like, this seems dangerous. So I went to go open it, and it exploded. And it went right into this eye. And it turns out it was 27%. It's not hydrolonic acid. Hydrogen peroxide, 27% hydrogen peroxide. So not 3%, but 27%. It turns out consuming a small amounts of hydrogen peroxide can actually be really good for you. And so I'd put a drop in my water and have a drink of hydrogen peroxide. I didn't know that happened, but it exploded, hit me in the eye, and it hurt super bad, and I washed it out. And ever since then, this eye sucks. It absolutely sucks. And I literally have somebody in my life who is an ophthalmologist or whatever you call them. I walked up to them and I was like, yeah, dude, this eye, it sucked. Like I had this hydrogen peroxide and exploded in my eye, and then I couldn't see. And he's like, oh, hydrogen peroxide can't do that. And I'm like, yo, dog. So like I had 10/20 vision, and then in 15 minutes, I went from 10/20 vision to blurry. So it's like, yo, dog, like it went in my eye, and then I couldn't see for the rest of my life. And they're like, oh yeah, that can't do that. I'm like, okay, so this is one of those experiences where you're telling me that I didn't have something, but the person who had it happen to them, had it. So acid. I took a lot of acid. After that, the next day, man, it was really hard to remember stuff. Okay, yeah, that was like the next day. Okay, I get it. Like my memory just wasn't there. I used to be able to sit in class, listen to everything, never study a single day, and pass the test 100%. That's why I claim I never did a day of homework in high school, because I could just sit in there and actually just do it. Well, it turns out after that day on the dot, I lost that power. I had to study starting from that day forward. And for you, that, for me, that was a very noticeable difference. That was kind of like when my eyeball got squirted with some juices and then I could literally not see well. What age? 19. So again, I could feel it happen actively. I don't think you're right. And I think you're stupid. So that's fine. Dude, you just got old that day. You just got old that day when you're 19, you just got old instantaneously. You aged 20 years. That's all that happened.
There's not that much of a difference between being smart and knowing how to use your intelligence. Like you could argue for, whatever the baseline biological capacity is or whatever, but like it became very clear to me at some point that knowing how to use your intelligence is a thing. And if you don't know how to use it, you might as well not have it. It's probably hard to know how much it rotted my brain. No, well, but I can look at how I spent my time back then.
That's, by the way, whoever said that in the comment was really, really correct, which is the unfortunate part is you can never A/B test, right? There is no such thing as A/B tests. You can only say what you feel and what you feel like should have happened, right? He feels like he should have been smarter. And very well, he could be right. But to what extent would he have been smarter? He's already clearly a very smart guy, right? So to what extent would he have been faster? Would he have been better? Maybe. But it could have also dramatically altered the course of his life. Sometimes being gifted more can often lead you to not be as successful in the things you are doing. There is no, there's no guarantees in life. Just because you became smarter doesn't necessarily mean you became better, right? You could actually end in a worse position.
Versus how I spend it today and what the outcomes are. Twitch audience member, most interactions can basically only be very superficial and very simple. Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I mean, let's take another one of my
trap exit. Hold on. Okay, so again, I'm sorry for putting you on the big board, but I have to. It just came by. Trap exit. Where did you go? Trap exit. Where did you go? Okay. Dang it. Where the hell am I? Okay. User trap exit. Most people with very high IQs are not successful. Okay, so I feel like we just got done describing how maybe we shouldn't say things in which have no basis in reality. Like, I just don't think you can say that, right? Like, I don't know how you would even begin to measure that, right? Like, I get things happen, citation needed, yeah. I just don't think it's true. So just think through your thoughts. Like, why was it? This is empirical. People with very high IQs generally aren't successful in normal terms. Unsure. Again, I don't know. I don't know if what you're saying is true. Now, maybe in the top 20 people, fair. They may be so smart that they have a hard time, conforming to reality. But what is very high? Like top 3%? Top 3% are probably just regular people. Yeah, Trump has a high IQ, we were told, right? Remember? I have a very high IQ. I know all the IQs. I have all of them.
My pet peeve questions. The how do I get started programming question, right? I hate that one, as frequent viewers to this channel know, but it's still better because it's not asking about gossip. It's ostensibly asking about an actual skill that somebody could practice and that has an intrinsic benefit. Whereas, like, did you hear about carbon, or what did you think about the M1, or whatever is just gossip, which has a function. I mean, the reason human beings gossip is because gossip has a function, but like...
It sounded like he wasn't sure if he could actually believe that himself. It has a function? Maybe, probably. I don't know what the function would be, right? I can't...
There is such a thing as way too much of that, and we're way down the way too much.
Fair.
You get the how to get started question. It can be overwhelming. No, I don't think so. I think anyone, to be very honest, most people asking the how to get started question are not programmers and won't be. It's like it's a self-filtering question. It's like if you're asking that question, you're not a programmer.
Interesting. I'm going to go with interesting on that one. I think I see what he's trying to say, which is there's to be a programmer, there definitely requires an intense amount of like self curiosity. You agree with the slight tweak? Hold on, I Twitch staff in here. If you ask that question multiple times, you're not a programmer at heart. Okay, fair. Yeah, that's kind of like where my head was going, which is there's the first time you have to ask, which is like, I know nothing. Where do I even go? And if someone says, go to Google and start Googling, right? Okay. Step one. I do think to be a programmer, you have to have some sort of innate built-in curiosity, right? I think that's real. That's fair. But if you're already on Twitch watching someone program, talking about stuff, and you've kind of perused a few channels, maybe that no longer falls into the category of somebody that's a programmer at heart. Now, I think someone can just simply be determined. I think you can become a programmer purely out of determination, right? And it has nothing to do with curiosity. You're like, I need to make a life change. I need to be able to go and provide for my kids, whatever it is, I'm going to do it. And that's it. And that is its own thing. Zero curiosity, still able to successfully do it, right? I think there's many different ways. I'm not sold on one. But I see the partial truth to that. But there's the difference between like when you don't know what you don't know, you got to start with a question. So it's good that they start with a question. But once you've started to see and interact and kind of understand like what's going on, but you're still asking the question, say you ask the question multiple times over and over again, you never just commit to anything. Maybe there's like a little bit of a difference there. And so I do understand that perspective as well. He did come up from the old school. He did come up from the RTFM or GTFO side of things. So I do get that. There is, yes. So that's kind of like where I'm getting at this. There's this whole idea of people who look for permission and people who look for forgiveness. And I do think that it is, really good to not try to ask for permission, right? I think you really should just always try to do something yourself and just go for it. And even if you're reinventing the wheel, you fully know that this wheel exists. Do it anyways. Sometimes that's like the best way to learn. Right? It's not like it's great to build your own game engine. There's way better game engines than the one you're going to build. I'm not trying my best to do. I'm literally trying to deliver this as the best I can. Because the problem is that I'm not going to go out there and say, if you ask that question, you're clearly not a programmer. Okay? I don't think that is good. I'm trying to give you, I think that this would be technically considered the red pill-ish answer, which is that you got to go out there and you got to do it. And at some point, if you don't know what you don't know, you got to ask a question. But once you have an idea and you never get past the question asking phase, then yeah, you're probably not ready to be a programmer. That's not me trying to avoid getting canceled. I'm prime pilled. I'm not sure what that is. Okay?
That's another reason why it annoys me. Even though you deleted all your social media stuff 4 years ago, when you're demotivated, it's so easy to find a way to waste your day on useless stuff, like lurking on Twitch. Even YouTube recommended videos are like 1-minute clips. Yeah, I mean, I understand that mode, right? There is this mode where you're not that motivated, and it's just very easy to get the very small feeling of reward or distraction or whatever from watching these small videos and stuff, for sure. But then you feel worse after that because then you spent the whole fucking day doing that 30 days in a row or whatever. So, the trick there's two things, right? So one trick is just to notice that pattern. Just see it. Just keep seeing it. You don't even have to do anything about it at first. Just keep seeing it. And then after enough seeing it, maybe you eventually can know what to do.
I do agree with that. Okay, hold on. We'll let him finish it because I have a lot on this topic that I feel very strongly about.
Often, if you just keep observing the pattern, it'll naturally give you the ability to break out of it because it lets your subconscious wrestle with what's going on.
I strongly disagree with that last part. I think any change is extremely intentional. And if you're not making that daily choice and that daily battle, it's extremely hard to change anything about yourself. I think most people are. That's why, just because you can do something does not make you free. Freedom comes from the fact that you can take your higher will and shape your actions based on what you want. Like, that's real freedom, or real liberty, shall we say, which is the ability to use your higher will as your guide. And a lot of people, what they don't have is that higher will ability. They have that higher will pinging that's like, oh, we should do this, but their lower will is just like so strong that they can't even, like, you're just an animal, right? Like, you don't have the ability to get out of your animal desires and actually do the higher, more difficult desires. Like, let me give you an example. This morning, I woke up at 5:15. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, my mom being in town, me wanting to spend time with her, I didn't go to bed till 10:30 last night. This sucks. Okay, that's me lying down. So that means I only lied down for like 6 hours and 45 minutes. This is just, for me, I'm not Thor. This is an unacceptable amount of sleep for me. I woke up, I felt shitty, okay? I felt horrible. I did not want to do anything today, right? Absolutely just kind of loathed this experience, right? But I got up, made some coffee, and I went into this room, turned on the stream, and started streaming. You know why? Because I knew something very, very important that was going to happen. If this is unmotivated, called a 0, and this is motivation, which we'll call this 100, that once I started doing the task, this was going to extend and get more and more and more exciting. And that I don't consider myself at this point, right? I don't try to measure if I should or should not do something when I'm at my low. I go and I do the thing and break through the low. And then it goes and it grows and it grows and it grows to the point where right now, all I want to do is write this client to do the performance testing for our tower defense, because I want to be able to set up everything that's needed so I can go and just like keep on crushing out code. But I wasn't there this morning. I absolutely did not want any of it. And if I wouldn't have done what I did today, guess what would have happened? Theoretically, this line would have just fallen even further back. And this line would have become even worse because I gave in to the worst part. Lower will, higher will. What I should do, what I ought to do, what I feel like I should do. It's extremely difficult to do what you ought, right? Anyways, try it. Try measuring it. Try getting out a book, like try getting out a little journal and write down exactly how you feel before you start a project. Talk about how you don't want to do it. Get it all out there. Write in that journal 45 minutes later after you've been doing it for a while, after you've gotten into the flow. And you'll notice that the ways and words of how you describe stuff is very, very, very different, right? All of a sudden, you're more excited about doing the thing. You have more motivation. And it's identical to working out, right? The first 5 minutes of a workout are just like god awful because it's just like, oh, I don't want to move my body, right? But then once you move your body, like, yeah, that's pretty good. Primus an eat that frog practitioner, so that I don't know.
Conscious wrestle with what's going on. The second thing, though, is to understand, like, okay, you're feeling demotivated or kind of bad or kind of down right now. So what? Like, who cares? Like, is that really that big of a deal? And if it's not, then why shouldn't you just do whatever you would normally do if you weren't feeling down? That's actually a very powerful mindset to have, right? Just whatever you're feeling is just what you're feeling right now.
Sorry, it's been bothering me.
It doesn't have a lot more depth or consequence than that. And that's weird because we're in the society that's often feeling fetishist, right? Like we have this entire industry that wants you to go talk about your feelings for $70 an hour. So of course they tell you that that's how to solve your problems, but it's really not. The right way to solve.
Some people maybe don't like this advice. I think some people do need it. Fair. I'm going to give an extremely hot take. I'm going to give a really, really hot take here. This one might get me canceled. I think a lot of people use therapy as a replacement for community. They don't have community in their lives. They don't have any real strong friendships. They don't have any real connection with other people. So of course their life is disastrous. Like they have no bonds to anything. And I don't know if therapy is going to help you. Like you might get something out of it, but you're not really getting what you need, which is people. You're a social creature. Man's a social creature, whether we like it or not. We're a social creature. Now, there are people that actually need therapy. I don't know. I never argue that thing, but I think most people suffer from a lack of community, real friends. Friends, how do you know you have a real friend? Move and go call friends. And if you have nobody to help you move, you don't have friends.
All of them is just to realize your feelings are just your feelings. And, it's nice to have happy feelings, but by definition, we don't have happy feelings all the time. And so just, accepting that is actually very powerful. In engineering, you call it admiring the problem. Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
That's also a good little thing he just said there. I actually really do like that. Accept the fact that the world isn't always going to be great. Like there's plenty of difficult things, right? There's plenty of difficult things. There's plenty of time that's not easy. Plenty of times that aren't fun. Sometimes they're in your control. Sometimes they're completely out of your control. But if you embrace the suck, I think it just makes things easier, right? I think that if you don't embrace the suck at all, I think it's extremely difficult to go through these.
It's not hard to put the phone down, but it's hard to stop yourself from picking it up instinctively. But you could increase the amount of work required. So, for example, you could just power your phone off. So that if you pick it up, you have to wait through a boot of the phone, right? And then you put a SIM password. Do whatever you need to do to fix that. You think it's pretty normal to ask and not a sign of the downfall of society. Okay, well, here's the thing.
I like Dr.
Look
K,
around
for all the people saying that.
At any technology that is not software. Even software is in decline, but it's kind of invisible. You can't see the inside of a program. Look at construction. What amazing buildings were built lately compared to what was built in the past. Look at transportation. What transportation systems were built lately compared to what was built in the past? Look at engineering. What new sources of energy technology were invented compared to what was invented in the past? Material science, all this stuff. Sometimes, like with material science, you may have limited knowledge of the field, but that's what your computer's for. You can look it up. We kind of haven't been doing that much for 30 or 40 years, is what you probably find, with some notable outliers, right? So one dude is responsible for electric cars and fucking rocket ships, okay?
Elon mentioned.
If that dude weren't there, you can imagine what the progress of both of those fields would be. Now, it is...
I both agree and disagree with him for different reasons, right? One reason that I think is really interesting is we definitely don't have the beauty aspect we used to. It's hard for me to say that's an L take or a good take, right? So the beauty aspects, you look at a lot of the old churches, the old architectures. There's some really impressive things done and created that I honestly have just it's really blowing away, right? Our reason wasn't, I don't try to quote unquote dog on capitalism, but it was just a different. Some of the motivations weren't quite the same as they are today, and so it wasn't simply about getting the thing done, but about building something that is beautiful and both practical and beautiful, right? And there's something that's different, shall we say, that happened hundreds of years ago than it does happen today. So I agree with that side of the take. I truly do agree with that side of the take. But I mean, there's also really impressive things being built. The tallest towers ever have been built now. That is something that's really impressive. It's impressive in a different sense. It's not, I wouldn't call it beautiful, but the engineering of it that allows it to sway when there's any form of earthquake and stuff like that. I mean, it is very impressive. Impressive does not equal beauty. That's very, very true. And so I think that's really cool. For people saying it's capitalism that's the fault, I think you guys are just fundamentally wrong. I'm not quite convinced it's capitalism that is the problem. The cathedrals were really, really incredible, right? Yeah, practical. It's probably better to say practicality versus aesthetics. People were very concerned. We've changed in what we consider the best, right? And so right now, the best is good, solid engineering and super, super tall. That doesn't really leave a lot of room for beauty. European architecture versus UX yeah, like I'm deeply unfamiliar with old European architecture other than pictures I've seen, and it's absolutely incredible some of the things I've seen. Money is sure related. I don't know if money is sure related. I mean, incidentally, yeah, probably. But I mean, you could just make that argument for everything, right? Money is incidentally related, and then just name anything. Labor costs make a huge difference, I'm pretty sure, and how productive people can be, yeah. True. One person can now build really incredible things, whereas it used to just take a master to build that one thing, right? Very, very different. Very, very, very different experience with those two things. If anybody can just simply press a button and have a factory produce a part because that one part got designed by one guy and now is being done over and over again, versus the person that actually had to hammer out swords for 50 years before he became a technical master, and then that person makes you a sword. Like there's a different. It's a different experience and a different emphasis on what we're doing, right? But also rockets are really incredible, so it's like very hard to compare. It's very hard to compare these things. They're different. They're different for different reasons.
It is very, very obvious. If you just look, all you have to do is just look. We are not building a lot of Hoover dams or Golden Gate bridges or anything like that, right? What happened? Something happened. And it's...
I don't know if that's technically true or not. So I actually have I have no idea, because they're already built. Well, there's other bridges you could build, right? So saying that they've already been built, therefore you don't need them, that's not true, right? But what are we building other things? I actually have no idea. The Sphere is really insane. The Sphere is actually super cool. I saw it. It's also horrifying for anyone that lives near there. It's so bright. Golden Gate, now all we got are Silver Gates. And Silver Gate is literally like 1/20th the size of the Golden Gate. I think marvels have become mundane. Ooh, that's a really interesting thought. Who just did that? I think marvels have become mundane. How long ago before people could fly? And now we can travel the world if you have money. Yeah, I mean, it is true. Sometimes, excluding recent Boeing incidences, airplanes are extremely impressive. But we've just seen it so much, we just kind of have this problem of seeing exactly how amazing it is, right? And maybe we can't keep making those steps. Insane tunnels, taller and taller skyscrapers. I mean, the skyscrapers, the modern ones are really, really impressive. Novelty wears off. Social media is so broad. Yeah. Dude, you're trying to take his expertise in a very narrow part of computing and then apply it everywhere, like he fucking knows the inner workings of everything, instead of maybe just admitting ignorance. I don't know if that's true either. Maybe we're missing the point of his argument, right? Like, I don't know the last truly big structure that was created in the United States. Okay, I'm just trying to. You gotta just try to understand somebody's argument. So instead of getting upset and calling the guy ignorant, there's probably a fundamental miscommunication going on. The Sphere is cool. The Sphere might be the last. I mean, is a big one, but I'm not sure if that's like the same. The Sphere, is okay. So here's an interesting kind of observation. The Sphere being the next big kind of like, we'll just call it the next big thing being built, right? It's really interesting. Let's take the Sphere and compare it to the Hoover Dam or the Golden Gate. What is the telos or the purpose of the Sphere versus the Golden Gate? The Golden Gate / the Hoover Dam is there to provide some sort of utility. Hoover Dam obviously is huge infrastructure, powers literally like Las Vegas. Obviously, the Golden Gate is able to ties 2 points of California together that you don't have to do a huge thing. The Sphere is purely entertainment. Kind of interesting to think about. If that's like our next biggest achievement, what is the focus of society at that point? Is the focus of society on improving people's lives, or is the focus on social experience? I don't know. Kind of interesting. It's an interesting observation. The new Coliseum, Just something. What is the sphere? Go look it up. I'm not saying he's wrong or right, because I can't. I don't know all the projects. I mean, the problem is we also did the Large Hadron Collider that went over, under 60 different countries. Like, that was pretty amazing. That wasn't too long ago. That was just within my lifetime. You know, I would assume that these super large mega projects, they're kind of like a once or twice or three times in a lifetime kind of thing.
It's major.
Is the Dubai Wall project that really thin, long wall that they can fit everybody in? I can't wait. You know what? Everybody that wants to go live in the Dubai Wall, please go live in the Dubai Wall. Okay, you go live there. We'll get all of you guys all nicely put into that, and you guys can have your own little society in your little wall, okay? Thank you. No thank you. Saudi Arabia.
We lost our ability to do certain classes of things, or lost the will to do them. And after enough not doing them, the ability goes away anyway, because these things are hard and you need to practice them in order to know how to do them.
Also, does that mean we get the chant build the wall? Asking for a friend. Just maybe you could change my mind on it. Absolutely. All right. Build the wall. Saudi Arabia.
Dude, we don't. Okay, when was the last time the USA actually won a war, by the way?
By the way, that's a very interesting point.
We spend more than any other nation on earth on the military. When was the last time we actually succeeded completely at a military objective? Like,
boom,
what's our track
roasted.
record there?
Like coffee, sshterminal.shop. That's all I'm saying.
So here's what I'm saying. The thing is, that has a cause. And the cause is part of the cause is what we as a culture accept and decide is okay, and how we decide what to do, right? And so when I say something like, I don't think it's a good idea to gossip about new programming languages that nobody knows anything about, it's part of that. I'm saying this is part of who we are now that is not good.
So actually the gossip part, yeah, I totally disagree with that. But the discussion part I think is really good. I'm not sure if he means purely just negative talk about things you don't understand. I think that can be, you don't even have to put the word programming languages in there. If you talk about things you don't understand and you talk meanly about things you don't understand, I think that it's just poor take. Like, just to say I don't know, and that's it. You don't, like, the best part is just saying you don't know. It looks better than having an opinion that's later proved like technically false, right? Don't do that. But as far as like discussing or being interested in new languages, there's a lot of really cool stuff. It was very cool looking at what Gleam was doing. Like, I think that's pretty neat. It's really neat. Like, the reason why I did Rust for a couple years is because I wanted to look into Rust. I mean, Zig is very interesting to me. Like, I'm very, very curious about looking into Zig.
Like, all these things that I mentioned, our inability to make progress in all these departments, is not orthogonal to how we decide to spend our time every day, right? It's just not. And you have to fix what you can fix, right? I'm not in charge of the federal government. I wouldn't know how to be in charge of the federal government, but you have to fix what you can fix. And so that's where I'm coming from. Also, by the way, so
I mean, it's an interesting argument to make. He just mentioned a bunch of things, and he's kind of wrapping it up, which is like, you, the individual, are part of the problem because you don't try to build big things in your life. If we had a culture of trying to build big things in our life, would we also have a culture that builds big things? I think that's what his argument. I'm trying to understand his argument. The last great structure built in the United States, probably your mom's house. Got him. He streams, by the way. That's THDV.
So part of what's feeding my distaste for the what do you think about this new programming language question is I know that people have that about what I'm doing. And I've seen a little bit of it. I try to stay away from all of that, but almost 100% of the commentary is just misinformed, has a completely incorrect idea.
By the way, sorry, someone said his argument is bitterness. I don't think his argument is bitterness. I don't see it as I just don't see this argument as bitterness. I don't think it's bitterness. I think he is making a good observation, which is people having opinions about things that they have no experience with, versus, which is slightly convoluted and maybe miscommunicated, which is learning about new and flashy things.
Of what I'm doing and why. Certainly to the extent it's informed, it tends to be very old and out of date, like informed by those early videos, which are very, very different compared to what the language is today. And agenda driven, but it's not a mistake that this information is inaccurate, because the utility for most people is not in whether the information is true or false. The utility is in whether they can use the information as scoring for their team, their political team, which for programmers is often a programming language or programming paradigm thing, and or just to boost their ego. And so almost all the information when people are gossiping about what I do is complete trash. So therefore, there's no reason to expect all the gossip about anything else not to be complete trash as well. That's what I'm saying, is like you're engaging in swimming in trash. Now, there is such a thing as high quality discussion about that sort of thing, but that would require you to go program in this language for a year or two, and me to go program in this language for a year or two, and then we come back and have a conversation.
I do like that. I like that a lot. I mean, this is precisely the reason why I said I was going to do a year of programming in Go, because everyone always has these super strong opinions of Go. If error equals nil, stupid language. Maybe. This type system is really weak. Stupid language. Maybe. Honestly, I haven't done enough of it to really truly know that is real. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to do this. I like you. I just want you to know I'm not trying to be a jerk to you. Okay. But I just got done seeing that old phrase. I don't know who said it, and I just accidentally scrolled too much. Which is strong opinions weakly held. That's like the definition of not strong opinions. Okay. You should have strong opinions strongly held. Okay. You should be able to argue and have a strong argument about it, and you should really believe what you believe. You should have opinions that are changed based on facts and experience. You should not have opinions that are weakly held, because that means they can be easily changed at any moment just because someone who is more eloquent than you says something. Okay? It is okay to have strong opinions that are strongly held. It's just that you should be able to change your opinion based upon evidence. Boom, goes the dynamite. I know you probably didn't mean it that way, but I'm just letting you know. Based opinions, basely held. There you go. Most people have weak opinions strongly held. That's the problem. It's also okay not to have opinions. Absolutely. That's why I'm doing 1 year of Go.
Good idea to gossip about new...
By the way, I had to jump in here because I didn't know where I was. There you go.
Progress in all these departments is not orthogonal to how we... Part of what's feeding my distaste for the what do you think about this new... completely incorrect idea of what I'm doing and why. Certainly to the extent it's informed, it tends to be very old and out of date, like informed by those early videos, which are very, very different compared to what the language is today. And agenda driven, but it's not a mistake that this information is inaccurate, because the utility for most people is not in whether the information is true or false. The utility is in whether they can use the information as scoring for their team, their political team, which are complete trash. So therefore, there's no reason to expect all the gossip about anything else not to be complete trash as well.
Trash.
That's what I'm saying, is like,
all right,
you're engaging in swimming in trash. Now, there is such a thing as high quality discussion about that sort of thing, but that would require you to go program in this language for a year or two, and me to go program in this language for a year or two.
This is where I say the Go thing. Been doing Go for like a year. There you go, Flip. So you're going to have to kind of figure that one out, Flip. Sorry, Flip. Flip mentioned. Flip zoom in. Flip zoom out. Flip get these muscles.
And then we come back and have a conversation. Otherwise, it's pointless, right? Isn't that how a lot of information and news actually are? You mean the swimming in trash? Yes, that's part of my point. Like, even mainstream news is this thing that I'm talking about now.
Very lovely. Play till the end because we love you. There we go. All right. Yeah, I do largely agree with everything that, I largely agree, but in like completely different reasons and for different reasons why, during this video. It's like, I agree 70%, agree 60%, majorities, at least it depends on what it is, right? It depends on which part we're talking about. I think the big thing I really liked at the end, which was, and then, like I said, I see this with Go all the time. People are like, if error equals nil, that's stupid. I would never want to use this. This is why I use TypeScript. And it's just like, if you think if error equals nil is the worst part about Go, it is a clear and obvious thing that you have never used Go. Beyond maybe some simple little project. There are plenty worse things you could cite as the reasons why you don't like Go. That is like the dead giveaway. That is the truest. There's many things worse, right? Like that is the truest, like kind of veil when you know that you're talking to somebody that has just no clue. Okay? That's that. Nil maps by default. Now, there you go. Now, that's a much better reason right there. Nil maps by default. 110%. Like that just gets you, and it's super duper annoying. Absolutely. There's some of those rules around channels that are just really annoying. The fact that I have to have a context being passed down to go with my channels all the time seems super duper annoying. And I don't like it. That's that. But I also really like, I really like Go. I have really liked my experience. I'm at like 2 months now of using Go. I plan on continuing to use I'm planning on continuing my 1 year of Go all the way through. Will I be upset? Maybe. Runes, I don't mind runes at all. Runes, I mean, you're going to get the exact same thing in many different languages, right? Or, I mean, Rust is going to give you a very similar experience, which is if you try to iterate through a string, you can iterate by character, right? Runes are just Go trying to tell you strings aren't just UT or U8s. They're more than U8s. They're contextual U8s. Sometimes they're like U16s. Runes are not bad. Lack of assert struck me the most. Yes, I have my own kind of assert structure. I think asserts would be really, really good. You need them for Unicode. Exactly. Go routines and channels are amazing. Yeah, I agree. Go routines and channels are amazing. Channels are also kind of stupid in some places. I think this is where like the fundamental problems with Go kind of show up, is that they didn't really have a good story around, they didn't have an option type. If they would have just supported an option type, I think they could have made their channels much more amazing. And, a couple interface changes and channels could have been incredible. But anywho, so I really like what he had to say here, and I think a lot of it could definitely be thought more about, and definitely things that I need to think more about myself. So, hey, the name. You know who the name is. The Blowogen.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
The Jonagen might have sounded a little bit better. The Blowogen just really didn't, that didn't really just come out. It didn't come off the tongue the way I wanted it to. Okay, I don't know what happened there.